The sun rose slowly over the busy streets of Mushin, Lagos. Roosters crowed in the distance, car horns honked even before daylight, and street vendors shouted about their goods before most people were even awake. In a small corner of Olateu Street, where roadside shops leaned on each other like tired friends, sat a tiny tailor's shop made of wooden planks and corrugated metal. On the faded wooden sign above the door were the words, "Stitches by Amara, Queen of Sharp Cuts." Inside, Amarachi, a slim woman with sharp eyes and quicker fingers, bent over her sewing machine. Her hands danced like lightning, guiding a bright anchor of fabric under the needle. She worked with focus and speed, humming to herself. She wasn't just any tailor in Mushin. Amarachi was the best. Her needle didn't just sew clothes, it created beauty. Whether it was for weddings, oambis, office wear, or street fashion, people said, if Amara makes it, heads will turn. At 29, Amarachi had built a name for herself. She didn't have much money, but her shop was always busy. Customers came from all over Lagos, Yaba, Surulere, even Lekki. Some sent bolts of fabric with Okada riders, begging for last-minute magic. Amarachi never failed them. She lived with her younger brother, Emeka, a final-year student at Lagos State University. Their parents had died in a bus crash years ago, leaving them to survive on their own. Amarachi had dropped out of school to take care of her brother, starting as an apprentice in a tailor's shop when she was just 17. Now she was the boss. She made enough to pay the bills, support Emeka's education, and feed herself. She didn't live in a mansion, but she was proud of what she had built. That morning, as Amarachi was finishing a senator-style kaftan for a picky banker from Victoria Island, a large black Prado Jeep stopped in front of her shop. She looked up from her machine. This was not normal. Her customers usually came in Danfoss or Uber, a Prado in Mushin. That meant either trouble or power. The back window rolled down slowly. A woman's voice called out, "You are Amarachi the tailor, right?" Amarachi wiped her hands and stepped outside. "Yes, madame, welcome." The car door opened, and a tall, elegant woman stepped out. She wore gold earrings, a blue wrapper, and had the posture of someone used to being served. "I am Olori Funmaleo," she said, "wife of His Royal Majesty, Oba Adekunle of Ire Kingdom." Amarachi's eyes widened. Oba Adekunle was a famous name in Lagos, a traditional ruler with old royal roots but new political power. He had lands, wealth, and influence. Rumors said even politicians feared him. He also had a reputation for being greedy and dangerous. "I want you to make something special for the Oba," the Olori said, stepping closer. "It is his 60th birthday next week, a grand celebration. Every important person in Nigeria will be there." She opened a leather handbag and brought out a shimmering gold fabric. "We need a royal agbada, fit for a king, but different, unique. Something no other tailor can do." Amarachi swallowed hard. "Madam, I will try my best." "No," the Olori said, raising a finger. "You will not try. You will succeed. The Oba is not a patient man. If he likes your work, he will reward you beyond your dreams. If not—" She paused, her eyes cold. "You will regret wasting his time." She gave a small smile. "You have 5 days. We will send someone to pick it up." She got back in the car and drove off. Amarachi stood frozen for a few seconds. Emeka came out of the house, rubbing his eyes. Who was that? Amarachi sighed, trouble in gold lace. For the next 4 days, Amarachi hardly slept. She refused all other jobs and focused only on the Oba's Agbada. She bought the finest lining, matched colors carefully, and even added tiny secret embroidery patterns that only a close eye would see. She worked deep into the night, powered by gari, beans, and cheap battery lamps. On the 5th morning, the sun rose, and so did Amarachi. She had finished. The Agbada was stunning, a gold robe with brown embroidery shaped like talking drums and ancient bean-in patterns. It was not just royal, it was powerful. At noon, the same black Prado came. This time a man stepped out, a tall man with dark glasses, broad shoulders, and a scar across his jaw. "I am Chief Gok," The Oba's personal aide, he said. Give me the clothes. Amarachi handed over the neatly packed agbada. Chief Gok opened the package, inspected it, nodded, and got back in the car without a word. Amarachi stared after him. No thank you, no smile, nothing. She shook her head. People and power. 2 days later, while Amarachi was finishing a bridal dress for a client, another envelope was dropped at her door. It was heavy, made of thick paper and sealed with red wax. She opened it slowly. You are invited to the grand royal birthday of His Majesty Oba Adekanli of Ire Kingdom. You are requested to attend as a special guest. Below, in smaller writing, come alone, do not bring anyone. Amarachi's heart skipped. On the day of the birthday, Amarachi wore her best outfit, a wine-red iro and buba she had sewn herself. She took a bolt to the palace in Ikoi, a massive compound hidden behind high white walls and guarded by men in uniforms and native caps. Inside, there were bright lights, loud drums, and luxury everywhere. Senators, musicians, business tycoons, even foreign ambassadors were all seated. In the middle, on a golden throne, sat Oba Adekanli himself. He was a large man with sharp eyes and a thick beard. He wore the agbada Amarachi had made, and he wore it like it was made by the gods. When he stood up to greet the crowd, everyone clapped, but his eyes were on one person only, Amarachi. After the event, Amarachi was led through quiet corridors to a smaller chamber in the palace. The Oba sat alone, drinking palm wine from a carved cup. You made this? He asked, pulling at his agbada. Yes, Your Majesty. You are clever, very clever. We need people like you. He stood and walked around her. I have many wives, many tailors, but none with hands like yours. What do you say? You leave Mushin and come here. Be my personal tailor, live in this palace. So only for me. He smiled, or better still. Become my seventh wife. Amarachi blinked. Your Majesty, I came to deliver clothes, not to be delivered into marriage. The Oba's smile faded. You think you have a choice? His voice grew cold. No one says no to the Oba. Amarachi knew she was in trouble, but her mind was already spinning. She bowed low. Your Majesty, allow me to return home to prepare. I must settle my shop, my brother. The Oba nodded. You have 3 days. After that, I will send for you. He waved his hand. Leave. Amarachi walked out, her heart beating like a talking drum. She wasn't going to prepare for marriage. She was going to prepare for war. The air in Mushin that evening was hot and heavy. The sun had gone down, but the city did not sleep. Cars honked, traders still called out their last sales, and smoke rose from roadside suya grills. Amarachi sat inside her small tailor shop with the lights off. The only glow came from her rechargeable lamp. She stared at the fabric scraps on her table, her thoughts far away from measurements and stitch lines. She had 3 days, 3 days before the Oba would send his guards to take her away, 3 days to plan, act, and escape without alerting a man who could destroy her with one command. Emika came in, balancing a tray of yua egoyin and bread. Amara, you haven't eaten all day. You okay? She looked up, her face tight. Emika, she said slowly, what I'm about to tell you must never leave your mouth. He sat down, already worried. She told him everything from the Oba's offer to the quiet threat behind his smile. Emika's mouth opened. He wants to marry you? Just like that? What is this? 1702. He thinks money and power give him the right. Let's run away. Let's go to Ibadan or Abuja. Amarachi shook her head. No, if we disappear, he'll find us. He's not just a king, he's connected. The only way out is forward, but we will choose how the story ends. She stood up and went to her cupboard. From the back, she pulled out a brown box filled with old-fashioned design books, photos, and paper cuttings. She threw it aside and reached for a smaller envelope hidden underneath. It was labeled, "For emergency only." Inside were copies of documents she had secretly collected during her time sewing for government officials, names, contracts, photos, Things powerful people didn't want public. She had never used them until now. "I've got a plan," she whispered. The next morning, Amarachi visited Auntie Dupe, her former boss and mentor. The woman had a larger tailoring business in Oshodi and had taught Amarachi all she knew about cutting, sewing, and surviving. "You want to pull what?" Auntie Dupe gasped, nearly dropping her tea. "I need help, quiet help. Child, that man is fire. If you poke fire, you burn. I'm not poking him. I'm tailoring his downfall." After a long silence, Auntie Dupe smiled. "I taught you well." They made a plan. The second day, Amarachi created a new outfit for herself. A plain, long kaftan with a hidden zip pocket and a tiny tracking device sewn into the lining. She also designed a second Egbada, almost identical to the one the Oba had worn, except this one was rigged with tiny sensors and a hidden flash chip. If worn and tapped in the right spot, it would activate a mini recorder and send out live data. She had once helped a young tech designer sew such things into stage costumes. Now she was using the knowledge for herself. By afternoon, she visited a former customer, Mr. Fola, a retired journalist. "You owe me for that wedding suit I made last year," she told him. He raised an eyebrow. "I paid you with exposure," she snapped. "Now it's time to return the favor. I need your media contacts, people who still believe in truth." Mr. Fola scratched his beard. "This better be good." "Oh, it's better than good. It's royal." On the third day, just before noon, the Black Prado returned. This time, two guards stepped out, silent, strong, wearing native wrappers and dark sunglasses. "You're ready?" one asked. "Yes," Amarachi said, carrying a small bag. Emeka hugged her tightly, whispering, "Are you sure?" She nodded. "We fight with our minds, not our fists." The car sped through Lagos traffic, heading back to the palace in Ikoi. Amarachi sat quietly, her thoughts calm. She was a tailor. She had spent her life taking measurements, checking angles, and fixing mistakes. Today, she was about to stitch her boldest design, a trap tailored for a king. The palace was even more beautiful than before. The birthday celebrations had ended, but the music, gold decorations, and laughter still echoed in the air. Amarachi was led to a guest suite where a maid offered her a purple lace wrapper and coral beads. "His Majesty wishes to see you dressed like a queen," the maid said. Amarachi nodded. She dressed slowly, carefully tucking her device laced dinner cloth under the wrapper. When she was ready, she was led to a private dining room. The Oba sat at the head of a long table, smiling like a cat who had caught a mouse. "Welcome, my tailor bride," he said. "I came as you asked," Amarachi replied calmly. Dinner was served: rice, goat meat, palm wine. Amarachi barely touched her food. She watched the Oba drink and laugh, his Egbada flowing like royal rivers. "So," he said after a while, "are you ready to become mine?" Amarachi leaned forward. "Not until I give you your wedding gift." The Oba raised an eyebrow. She opened her bag and brought out the second Egbada, something special, more powerful than the last one. He stood and took it. His eyes gleamed. "You spoil me." He put it on right there in front of her. She touched the embroidery near the left sleeve, just briefly. Click. A tiny light blinked once inside the fabric, then stopped. It had begun. That night, across Lagos, small groups of journalists received a strange message. An anonymous tip, a short live clip. It showed the Oba, speaking privately, drunk and careless. It caught him talking about shady land deals, stolen funds, and a hidden gold mine in Ogun State he had seized from local villagers. He laughed about bribing politicians, mentioned names, dates, even offered details. He didn't know Amarachi's Smart Fabric had been recording him. Within 2 hours, the video began to spread online. Royal leak. The Oba's golden secret stranded on Twitter. Bloggers picked it up. News sites published it. Even international media noticed. The palace phones rang non-stop. The Oba's aides panicked. The king himself, still wearing the Agbada, shouted at his guards, "Find that tailor. Find her now." But Amarachi was already gone. She had slipped out during the confusion, changed clothes, and boarded a waiting keek to the mainland. Her phone was off, her devices hidden. She arrived at Auntie Dupe's back room and collapsed on the floor. You did it, Auntie Dupe said, locking the door. You really did it. Amarachi nodded. But it's not over. He will come. He won't give up. No, the older woman said, but now the world is watching. The sun rose slowly over Lagos, but the palace in Ikoyi was not at peace. It had been 24 hours since the secret video of the Oba had leaked online. Across Nigeria and even in some parts of the world, people were talking about it. The news, the gossip blogs, the radio shows, even pastors during morning prayers were asking, how could a royal leader say such things? Inside the palace, the Oba was not sleeping. He paced the floor of his private chambers, his bare feet hitting the cool tiles like the beat of a war drum. His face was dark with anger. I trusted that girl, he hissed. I gave her gold attention, my favor. Now she makes a fool of me before the whole nation. His personal assistant, a small man named Combe, stood silently, afraid to speak. You. What are you doing standing like a broomstick? Find her. I want her found before sunset today. Yes, Your Majesty, Combe replied quickly, backing away. That morning, every corner of Lagos seemed to be on edge. In Mushin, where Amarachi's little shop sat behind the crowded markets, two plain-clothed policemen were asking questions. Have you seen this girl? They asked an old fruit seller, showing a photo of Amarachi taken from her Instagram page. No, sir, the woman replied, shaking her head. But I heard she's famous now. Sharp girl. The policeman frowned. They visited other shops, tailors, mechanics, hawkers. No one had useful answers, or maybe no one wanted to talk. Lagosians were many things, but above all, they knew how to mind their own business. Meanwhile, Amarachi was hiding in the back room of Auntie Dupe's larger tailoring shop in Oshodi. The room was dark, with only one small window and a fan that made more noise than breeze. But it was safe. Emeka sat on the floor beside her, scrolling through social media. You're trending, he said, showing her the screen. Tailor with guts. They've even started using your face in memes. Amarachi smiled faintly, but she knew better than to feel safe. She turned to Auntie Dupe. How long before the Oba gets angry enough to do something dangerous? Auntie Dupe sighed. Child, that kind of man doesn't get angry, he gets even. Later that afternoon, a strange thing happened. The Oba held a press conference, his first since the video leak. Dressed in royal blue agbada, with his walking stick carved from ancient Iroko wood, he smiled at the cameras. I, the Oba of Lagos, have chosen to forgive the young woman who made a mistake. Youths must not be punished forever. If she returns to the palace, we will settle things peacefully. It was a beautiful lie. The reporters clapped. The people watching online argued. Some said he was wise. Others called it a trap. Amarachi watched the video from the back room. He's acting like a man who wants peace, Emeka said. But he's planning war, Amarachi added. This isn't forgiveness, it's bait. She had known men like this before. Men who smiled with their mouths while their eyes stayed cold. Men who wanted control more than truth. Still, she had one more move to make. Just before PM, someone knocked on Auntie Dupe's door. Everyone froze. Auntie Dupe picked up a kitchen knife and walked to the door. Who is it? A voice replied softly, Mama Bisi. Please, it's urgent. Auntie Dupe peeked through the curtain. It really was Mama Bisi, an older woman who used to sew wedding dresses before her sight grew weak. She was holding a bag of groceries. Once inside, she dropped the smile. Child, she said to Amarachi, they're watching this area. I saw two black jeeps parked near the end of the road. Men in suits. They asked my neighbor about you. Amarachi's breath caught. They're getting closer, Mama Bisi continued. You must leave tonight. I brought this. She opened her bag and handed over a train ticket. Midnight train to Ilorin. From there you can go anywhere. I have a niece who runs a fashion house in Kaduna. She'll take you in. Auntie Dupe's eyes filled with tears. Mama Bisi, thank you. The older woman smiled. When I was younger, I spoke out against a military officer. I lost my shop, my home. If I can help one more woman avoid my fate, I will. Amarachi hugged her, deeply touched. At 11:15 p.m., under the cover of darkness, Amarachi left the shop. She wore a large hoodie, no makeup, and carried only a small handbag. Emika and Antidupe walked on either side of her as they headed for the nearby Keek stand. They avoided the main roads. Instead, they walked through back alleys, passing sleeping goats, closed beer parlors, and broken fences. When they reached the station, they blended into the small crowd. Amarachi kept her head low. Board coach 5, Mama Bisi had told her. Window seat. Emika hugged her tightly. I'll be watching the news. If you need me, I know, she whispered. But if things go wrong, disappear. Promise me, I promise. The train started. Moving slowly, Amarachi looked out the window one last time. Lagos was fading into the dark, but she was not running forever. She was only gathering thread for the next stitch. 3 days passed. In the palace, the Oba's mood had not improved. The police had still not found Amarachi. The leak continued to spread. One of the politicians mentioned in the video had gone on air, denying everything and threatening legal action. The Oba called an emergency meeting. I want this girl erased, he shouted. No mercy. Then a phone call came. Com answered it, listened for a few seconds, then handed the phone to the Oba. Who is this? The king demanded. A voice replied, calm and strong. It's Amarachi. I just wanted you to know I'm not done sewing. The line went dead. The train slowed and stopped at Ilorin station, its wheels screeching against the rails. Amarachi stepped off carefully, feeling the cool evening air on her face. She was far from Lagos now, in a city she had never visited before. Her heart beat fast, but she held her head high. This was a new beginning. The streets were quieter. Here, smaller shops lined the roads, and the sky stretched wide and clear. Amarachi followed Mama Bisi's directions to a modest guest house, where a kind woman named Hawa awaited her arrival. Welcome, Amarachi, Hawa said, opening the door with a warm smile. My niece will be happy to meet you tomorrow. Amarachi nodded. Thank you for helping me. Hawa set out some food and fresh water. Eat well. You will need strength for what is coming. The next day, Amarachi woke early. She washed her face with cool water from the basin and dressed carefully. The day was important. Hawa's niece, Fatima, owned a small but respected fashion studio in the heart of Ilorin's market district. Fatima was known for her beautiful traditional dresses mixed with modern styles, just like Amarachi dreamed of making. When Amarachi arrived at the studio, she felt a spark of hope. Fatima greeted her with a hug. Your reputation precedes you. I have heard about your courage. Amarachi smiled shyly. Thank you. I want to learn and grow here. For weeks, Amarachi worked hard. She studied new sewing techniques, helped design dresses, and learned how to manage a business. Fatima trusted her and gave her a corner of the studio to practice alone. But Amarachi did not forget Lagos or the Oba. Every night, she thought about the man who had tried to control her. One evening, as Fatima closed the shop, Amarachi said, I have a plan. Fatima looked surprised. Tell me. Amarachi leaned closer. The Oba's power comes from fear and secrets. If we expose the truth, we can free the people. Fatima nodded slowly. But how? Amarachi's eyes shone. I will create a new collection, a fashion show that tells a story of bravery, lies, and justice. It will reach the hearts of many. Fatima smiled widely. I will help you. Months passed. The fashion show was set for the big hall in Ilorin's cultural center. Amarachi's designs were bold. Each dress told part of the story, rich embroidery of chains breaking, colors of fire and hope, symbols of truth shining bright. Invitations went out to journalists, influencers, and even some politicians. On the night of the show, the hall was full, lights dimmed, music started. Models walked the runway with confidence, wearing Amarachi's story. The crowd watched, captivated. At the end, Amarachi stepped forward to speak. This collection is not just clothes, she said. It is a message. We cannot live in fear. We must stand for truth and freedom." The audience erupted in applause. Back in Lagos, the news of Amarachi's fashion show spread quickly. The Oba heard about it through his contacts. He was furious. "That girl is making a fool of me again." He ordered his men to stop the show, but it was too late. Amarachi's courage had inspired many. Even some of the Oba's closest allies began to question their loyalty. One night, Amarachi received a phone call. "Amarachi," a voice whispered. She recognized it immediately. "Oba," she said calmly, "what do you want?" There was a long pause. Finally, the Oba said, "I underestimated you. You have won this battle." Amarachi smiled. "But remember," she said softly, "the war is not over, and sometimes the cleverest tailor changes not only the fabric but the whole cloth." The line went dead. The days after the fashion show were full of promise and danger. Amarachi's name was on everyone's lips in Ilorin, Lagos, and beyond. She had become a symbol of courage and hope, but power always comes with risk. Amarachi was no longer just a tailor, she was a leader. Young women and men came to Fatima's studio, asking to learn sewing and design. They wanted to be part of something bigger, a movement for change. Amarachi welcomed them with open arms. "We will stitch a new future," she told them. Together they worked on new designs, stories woven into fabric. Each piece was a voice for the unheard. A step toward freedom. Meanwhile, the Oba's anger grew like a storm cloud. His men watched closely, trying to find ways to stop Amarachi. One afternoon, Emeka called Amarachi in a panic. "They're planning something," he said. "What?" Amarachi asked, her heart racing. "They want to shut down Fatima's studio, claim it's illegal." Amarachi knew the law was often used as a weapon against those who challenge power. "We won't let that happen," she said firmly. Amarachi called a meeting. "We must be ready," she told her friends. "We will not be silenced. We will fight with truth, with art, with community." The next day, when the officials came to close the studio, they were met by a crowd of supporters. Journalists were there too, cameras rolling. "No illegal business here," Amarachi declared. The officials hesitated. The world was watching. At the same time, something surprising happened. A politician who had once been close to the Oba reached out to Amarachi. "I want to help you," he said quietly. Amarachi was cautious. "Why?" she asked. "Because the Oba is dangerous, and I want a better Lagos." Together, they planned ways to expose corruption and bring justice. But Amarachi's fight was not without loss. One night, Fatima's studio was vandalized, windows smashed, fabrics torn. "It's a warning," Fatima said, tears in her eyes. Amarachi held her tightly. "We will rebuild," she promised, and rebuild they did. Just when it seemed Amarachi was winning, the Oba's men kidnapped Temika. A message came. "Tell Amarachi to stop or lose her closest friend." Amarachi was faced with a terrible choice. Would she give up? Or would she risk everything to save Emeka and continue the fight? The night was thick and quiet in Ilorin, but Amarachi's heart was loud with worry. Emeka, her closest friend, had been taken by the Oba's men. The message was clear: stop the fight or lose him forever. Amarachi paced the small room she rented. She looked at the designs scattered on the table, symbols of hope, strength, and freedom. But right now, her only thought was Emeka. Amarachi called Fatima and a few trusted friends. "We cannot wait for help," Amarachi said. "We must find Emeka ourselves." Fatima nodded. "We will do this together." They planned carefully. The Oba's men were dangerous, but they had to be brave. In the shadows of a quiet mosque, they met a man named Suleiman. He was a former police officer who had left the force because of corruption. Now he worked quietly to protect the innocent. "I know where they are keeping Emeka," Suleiman said. Amarachi's heart leapt. "Tell us everything." Suleiman explained the location, a small abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. That night, Amarachi and her friends moved quietly through the streets. They wore dark clothes and carried only what they needed. The warehouse was guarded by two men. Suleiman had brought some sleeping pills to use if needed. Amarachi took a deep breath. Remember, we want to avoid violence if possible. They crept closer. Suleiman threw a small pouch near the guards. Soon the men were snoring softly. Amarachi and Fatima slipped inside. Inside the dusty warehouse, Emeka sat tied to a chair. His face was bruised but alive. Emeka, Amarachi whispered. He smiled weakly. I knew you would come. They untied him quickly, but just as they were about to leave, the sound of footsteps echoed. More guards appeared. Amarachi's heart pounded. Run. They dashed through the dark corridors. Fatima held Emeka's arm to keep him steady. Outside, the streets were empty, but they had no time to rest. They reached a safe house where Amarachi's team waited with a car. The next morning, news spread that Emeka was free. The Oba's men were furious but also confused. Amarachi's courage was a thorn in their side, but Amarachi knew this was just the beginning. The fight for justice in Lagos was far from over. The sun rose over Ilorin, casting golden light on the city. Inside the studio, Amarachi stood with Fatima, looking at the sewing machines, fabrics, and designs that now represented more than fashion. They were symbols of a growing movement. After Emeka's rescue, more people joined Amarachi's cause. Students, traders, tailors, and market women sent her letters, messages, and even money. They didn't just want beautiful clothes anymore, they wanted a better Nigeria. One morning, a group of university students visited the studio. We want to help, said Ao, their leader. We can organize peaceful rallies and spread your message. Amarachi smiled. Let's walk carefully, but let's walk together. But not everyone who came was loyal. A woman named Said joined the studio as a new apprentice. She claimed to admire Amarachi, but she often asked too many questions about their plans, finances, and the people helping them. Fatima was the first to grow suspicious. I don't trust her, she whispered. Amarachi nodded. Let's watch and wait. A major Lagos newspaper wrote a full-page story titled The Tailor Who Dares Kings. Amarachi became a national figure. Her story spread across social media, radio, and television. With fame came pressure. Every word she spoke now mattered. Every mistake would be noticed. She took extra care in her speeches and designs. She met with lawyers, activists, and even former politicians who offered quiet support. One night, Emeka walked into the studio with worry in his eyes. There's a new group calling themselves Citizens for Order, he said. They're funded by the Oba's allies. They say you're dividing the country. Amarachi sighed. First, they ignored us. Then they tried to scare us. Now they're trying to confuse the people. Later that week, Fatima found a USB drive hidden inside Said's bag. She gave it to Amarachi. Inside were voice recordings and photos Said had been spying for the Oba all along. They confronted her quietly. Why? Amarachi asked. Said looked down. He promised me a shop of my own, a future. Amarachi said gently, you don't have to sell your soul for a future. They let her go, but Amarachi knew something now. Her enemies were getting smarter. At the next public event in Ilorin, Amarachi stood on stage to give a speech. The crowd was large, excited, hopeful. As she began to speak, a woman near the front screamed, Look, a gun. Panic spread. People ran. Chaos filled the air. Amarachi was rushed off stage, shaken but unharmed. Later, they discovered it was a fake gun, planted to cause fear and stop her from speaking. It was a message. You are not safe anywhere. That night, Amarachi couldn't sleep. She sat by the window and looked at the stars. Fatima joined her. You can stop, you know. No one will judge you. Amarachi shook her head slowly. If I stop, they win. And not just over me, over all of us. She stood up. We keep going. The decision wasn't easy. After all the fear, the attacks, and the betrayal, going back to Lagos felt like walking into the lion's den. But Amarachi knew the time had come. This fight began in Lagos, she told Fatima one quiet morning, and that is where it must end. Fatima gripped her hand. Then we will go with you. They didn't announce their return. No camera crews, no journalists. Amarachi, Emeka, Fatima, and 4 trusted friends packed into a small van and drove through the night. As the city lights of Lagos came into view, Amarachi's stomach tightened. So many memories: the small tailor shop in Agege, the palace, the dress that almost made her a prisoner. And now the city waited again, but this time she was not the same girl. They didn't go back to Agege. It was too risky. Instead, Amarachi's group rented a small warehouse in Yaba, close to the university. The building was old but quiet, with enough space to plan and work. Inside, they set up sewing tables, laptops, and shelves, with cloth and banners. They called it the Luma place, where truth would be stitched into every thread. Amarachi gathered her team. "We won't fight them with guns," she said. "We'll fight them with story, fashion, and people." They began planning a massive final fashion event, the Lagos Truth Gala. It would be held in a public space, Freedom Park. The designs would expose corruption, greed, and oppression. They would invite the public, the media, and even the Oba. Emeka organized volunteers to hand out flyers, speak at churches, mosques, and schools. "We are not just promoting fashion," he told a group of university students. "We are revealing what they tried to hide." Amarachi herself visited local tailors, encouraging them to join. "This is our Lagos," she said. "We have the right to make it better." Many joined, but not all believed. The Oba's men were watching. Reports of Amarachi's return had reached the palace. "She dares to come back," the Oba shouted. He slammed his staff on the marble floor. "This time we silence her for good." He ordered spies, bribes, even threats to venues. One by one, halls cancelled Amarachi's bookings, but she held firm. "If they shut doors," she said, "we'll make our own stage." Just when all hope seemed lost, a call came from a woman named Madamoyen. She was once the Oba's personal designer. "I saw what he did to you," Madamoyen said, "and I've seen enough. You can use my compound. It's large, private, and in the center of town." Amarachi was shocked. "Why help me?" she asked. "Because power without conscience is dangerous," Madamoyen replied, "and because your courage reminds me of who I used to be." Amarachi worked through the nights, designing a final gown not for sale, not for a client, but for truth. It was long, deep black at the base, slowly fading into white at the top. The dress had gold embroidery of broken chains on the sleeves and a phoenix rising from fire at the back. She called it the rebirth. "This dress will speak for every woman who has been silenced," she whispered as she finished the last stitch. 2 days before the show, a note was slipped under their door. "If you show your face at the gala, we'll make sure it's your last." Fatima's hands trembled as she held it, but Amarachi folded the paper and dropped it into the fire. "I've come too far," she said. "Let them come." The night before the Lagos Truth Gala, Amarachi stood on the rooftop of the loom and looked out over the city. "I am not just a tailor anymore," she said quietly. Emeka stood beside her. "No, you're not. You're the thread holding the people's hope together." She smiled. "Then let's sew tomorrow carefully." The sun rose slowly over Lagos, its light washing over busy streets and quiet corners. But in one compound near Victoria Island, something different was happening. People moved quickly. Chairs were arranged, lights tested, cameras checked. Beautiful clothes were rolled out, each with a powerful message. It was the day of the Lagos Truth Gala. And Amarachi, the tailor who dared to challenge an emperor, was ready. Madamoyen's compound had been transformed. A long runway stretched through the center, with bold fabrics hanging above like flags. Banners read, "Style is strength, stitches of change, fashion is the new fire." Guests began to arrive: tailors, traders, artists, students, and even local celebrities. Cameras flashed, reporters whispered, "Will she really show up?" Inside a back room, Amarachi looked into the mirror. She wore a deep blue dress with silver thread shaped like broken chains. Her hair was tied back. Her eyes were steady. "You look like a queen," Fatima said softly. Amarachi smiled. "No, just a tailor who refuses to be silent." In the Oba's palace, The old king sat on his gold throne, watching the event on a private screen. He wore a red robe and twisted his rings slowly. Why is she still breathing? He asked his advisor. We tried, Your Majesty, but the people love her now. If we strike too openly, it may cause protest. The Oba slammed his fist. Then do it quietly. Make it look like an accident. A man in a black cap nodded and disappeared into the shadows. The crowd clapped as the first models stepped onto the runway. Each outfit told a story. One dress was stitched with empty wallets and broken clocks, a symbol of stolen time and poverty. Another coat had pockets that spilled fake gold coins, each marked with the face of a corrupt leader. Each piece got louder applause than the last. Fatima stood backstage, tears in her eyes. We did it, Amarachi. They understand. But Amarachi wasn't smiling. Something didn't feel right. Halfway through the show, a man appeared. At the edge of the crowd, he wore sunglasses and held a small bag. He didn't clap. He didn't speak. He watched Amarachi too closely. Emeka saw him first. That man, he whispered. He's not just a guest. Amarachi nodded. He's from the palace. The lights dimmed. A soft drumbeat echoed across the compound. A spotlight turned on. Amarachi stepped onto the runway. The crowd rose to their feet. She walked slowly, her dress glowing in the light, the phoenix embroidered on her back catching every eye. People gasped, phones flashed. Some wept. At the end of the runway, Amarachi turned to face the crowd. She lifted a microphone. My name is Amarachi, she began. I am a tailor, a daughter, a fighter, and like many of you, I was told to stay quiet, stay small. She paused. But I say no more. We are not powerless. We are not voiceless. We are the needle and thread. We will sew a new story for Lagos, for Nigeria. The crowd roared, but then a loud pop screams, chaos. The man in sunglasses had thrown something, a small device, onto the runway. Smoke burst out. People ran. Children cried. Security guards rushed to the scene. Fatima grabbed Amarachi's hand. Come. This way. But Amarachi didn't move. She stood in the smoke, coughing, eyes wide. Then, out of the fog, someone grabbed her arm, rough and strong. The man in the black cap. You should have stayed in Ilorin, he hissed. Suddenly, someone tackled him from behind. It was Madame Oyen. She held a small can of pepper spray and emptied it in two. The man's eyes. He screamed and stumbled back. Amarachi fell to the floor, gasping. Security came, cuffed the man, and led him away. Madame Oyen helped Amarachi up. Still think you're just a tailor? She whispered with a grin. Amarachi stood again, bruised, shaken, but standing. She stepped back into the light. The smoke cleared. The crowd clapped louder than ever. In that moment, the Oba's plan had failed and Amarachi had won, not with fists, but with courage. Back at the loom, Amarachi sat with Emeka and Fatima. Are you okay? Emeka asked. Amarachi looked at them and smiled. I am now, but we're not done yet. She looked at the dress, torn a little at the hem, but still glowing. The final stitch comes next. The city was on fire, not with flames, but with talk. Every blog, radio station, and street corner buzzed with the same story. The tailor who stood against the Oba, the dress that defied power, the gala that changed Lagos. Even people who hadn't seen the show watched clips online, shared millions of times. One thing was clear. Amarachi had become more than a tailor. She had become a symbol. But deep inside the Opa's palace, a storm was growing. The Opa threw his goblet across the room. Wine splattered on the wall. Do you see what she's done? He shouted at his advisors. She humiliated me. One of them tried to speak. Your Majesty, perhaps it is time to silence. The Oba roared. She must be erased from history. But something had changed in his council. Some of them looked away. Some had attended the gala secretly. Some had heard their daughters speak Amarachi's name with pride. The Oba was losing not just the city, but the palace too. 3 days later, Amarachi received a letter, not from a lawyer, not from a police officer, but from the Oba himself. I wish to speak with you. Face to face, no guards, no tricks, just you and me. Come to the palace at noon. Everyone told her not to go. Emika said it could be a trap. Fatima said, let the people fight this for you now. But Amarachi looked at the letter and said, I must finish what I started. She wore a simple green gown, no fancy stitching, no embroidery, just clean lines and quiet strength. The guards at the gate opened it without a word. Some even nodded with quiet respect. She walked through the palace halls where she once brought her sketches, shaking and afraid. Now she walked tall. At the throne room door, a servant bowed and let her in. The Oba sat alone, his robe heavy with gold. He looked older than before. Tired, angry, but also curious. You are brave to come, he said. Amarachi stood calmly. You asked for a tailor, your majesty. I'm here. He raised an eyebrow, still clever with words. Tell me, why did you fight me? She took a breath. Because you use power to silence people, but I use my hands to help them speak. The Obe laughed coldly. You think you've won? No, she replied. I think Lagos is waking up. That's all. The room was quiet. Then he leaned forward. I will make you an offer, a new shop, a mansion, protection. If you end this now. Amarachi didn't blink. No deal. The Oba slammed his fist. Do you know who I am? She looked him in the eye. Yes, a man afraid of a woman with a needle. Just then, a soft knock at the door. It opened and in walked Madame Moyin. The Oba stared in shock. You. What are you doing here? Amarachi stepped aside. She's not just a helper, your majesty. She was once your closest designer, and now she's been helping me. Madame Moyin smiled sadly. I kept your secrets for years, but no more. She held up a flash drive, records of payments, threats, and stolen public money, all stitched into hidden pouches of the royal garments. The Oba's mouth fell open. You traitor. No, she said, just a tailor who woke up. The video went online that night. The Oba's crimes, stitched into his clothes, revealed to the whole world. Protests broke out. News stations played clips over and over. The government had no choice but to act. Within a week, the Oba was removed from his throne and placed under investigation. For the first time in decades, Lagos had no royal voice, only the sound of the people rising. Months passed. Amarachi didn't take a throne. She didn't run for office. Instead, she opened a school in Ilorin and later one in Lagos. There, young girls and boys learned not just tailoring, but courage, creativity, and how to speak through their craft. Madame Moyin joined as a teacher. Fatima managed the workshops. Emika handled the books and eventually asked Amarachi to marry him. She said yes, and on the wall of the academy, framed in glass, hung the dress with the phoenix. One afternoon, a little girl asked Amarachi, Auntie, how did you defeat the Oba? Did you fight him? Amarachi smiled. No, child. I stitched the truth and let it shine in the light.